Well, there was word today that President Trump has requested test kits from South Korea to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic here in the U.S. South Korea winning praise for quickly ramping up mass production and implementation of tests. Our Joo Hee-cho in Seoul with more on that and the other precautions in place.
Most of the buildings in South Korea have all these safety measures. This one, before you go in, and then at the entrance, they make sure your temperature is normal. 감사합니다. Okay, mine's very normal. Again, and then more sanitizers. This is a negative pressure room. He's going to show us, because they just deep cleaned this place. They said it's safe for us to come in. This is a consultation room. You sit here, can talk to the doctor, and the doctor decides whether you need to get tested or not. And this is where they collect your samples. These two tents are also negative pressure facilities. And this is where you wait when you come to get tested. And just in case you are infected, they have this negative pressure tank. So what is it like these days? Has it slowed down?
Yes, a little bit, but we are still testing. We tested 150 testing a day.
Oh.
And many students who come from abroad can get a free testing even though they have no symptoms.
So even if you don't have any symptoms and you came from the US or Europe recently, then you can come here and get tested free of charge.
Yes.
South Korean authorities are now focusing on screening foreigners coming into the country. Now, all arriving passengers from Europe are tested at the airport free of charge. This will also eventually include travelers from the US.
Our many thanks to Joo Hee-cho in Seoul.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Now, if you're watching us in South Korea, you will know very well that demand is through the roof for protective face masks here, as fears linger over how the coronavirus outbreak might unfold in the coming days, weeks and months. Shelves have been stripped bare and limits have been set on how many masks people are allowed to buy. However, some help may be at hand as South Korean researchers have developed a reusable mask filter that maintains its function even after multiple washes. That said, the mask requires government approval before it can be commercialized, go on sale to the public. Park Se-young with this report.
This mask filter, which can be placed inside a cotton mask, was developed to maintain its efficiency even after more than 20 washes using soap. The filter structure also remains unchanged after 3 hours of disinfection with alcohol, which means it can be used for more than a month. Conventional mask filters use an electrostatic method to block particles, so their efficiency wears off as the static energy on the surface gradually disappears, and they cannot be washed. But this new filter was made by crossing and aligning fine nanofibers to create small air holes that block viruses while allowing for easy breathing.
The filter is not static, but instead provides a physical barrier so it can come into contact with liquids.
The research team hand-washed the filter using soap, and there was no change in the nanofiber structure even after 20 washes. The filter maintained its structure and 94% of its KF80 to N95 filtration ability after being dipped in ethanol. It also withstood 4,000 crumples and stretches. The researchers plan to commercialize the filter once they get approval from the Food and Drug Ministry. They expect the filter to solve the mask shortage in Korea, as well as reduce the environmental impact of masks when they're thrown away. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Tonight, as much of the world considers new lockdowns to stop the coronavirus, cases have declined substantially in China and South Korea. Remy Inocencio looks at what those two nations have done to get the upper hand in the battle.
In South Korea's capital, Seoul, cleaning crews disinfect subway cars several times each day. And drive-through coronavirus testing gives 10,000 people their results every day. All part of a national action plan that's pulled infection rates down without any city lockdowns.
Early diagnosis is key to fighting this virus.
Tina Park is an expert on Korean affairs.
And in South Korea, they've adopted a measure called a triple T, so trace, test, and treat.
Meanwhile, in China, the government attacked. In the epidemic's heart of Wuhan, city officials built 2 hospitals with more than 2,000 beds in the span of a few weeks. To stop the spread, a massive lockdown radiated out to nearly 60 million people across central China, while strong-arm tactics were used against people who refused to wear masks, with some beaten while others were locked into their homes, forcefully quarantined. And a new incredible stat out of China just today. The country reported only one new domestic coronavirus case. There were 20 more, but those were imported from people traveling in from overseas. And anyone doing that gets to face a mandatory 14-day quarantine, and that's on their own dime. Nora?
Interesting details from there. Thank you, Ramey.
From the United States to China, media outlets have been heaping praise on South Korea's response to COVID-19, and the numbers don't lie. Just when it looked like this coronavirus outbreak was spiraling out of control in recent weeks, we've come back down to double-digit increases in infections over the past couple of days, keeping the overall number at a little over 8,000. And that's led other countries to ask what South Korea's done. Much of the discussion in the US, for example, has focused on early and efficient testing. With more than 250,000 people now tested so far in South Korea, the US appears to be increasingly benchmarking Korea's drive-through testing model, while the country's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has addressed the issue in numerous interviews over the last few days. Interviews that have also praised South Korea's response. But Dr. Fauci, who's advised every US president since Ronald Reagan, has also admitted the US just isn't set up for what's happened here. As pointed out by Dr. Margaret Harris of the World Health Organization in an interview with the BBC, South Korea did learn a lot from the MERS outbreak here in 2015. She also stressed the importance of communication, using South Korea as an example of putting out information every time there's a new case, helping to limit clusters of infections. Indeed, the BBC's featured numerous related reports in print and on screen, including an article titled "Coronavirus in South Korea: How Trace, Test and Treat May Be Saving Lives," which neatly summarizes the priorities here. While the British media have also questioned why Prime Minister Boris Johnson is not following South Korea's model, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has suggested a G20 teleconference summit to discuss what's worked here. According to US National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, President Trump will actively consider the proposal, which Moon also put to French President Emmanuel Macron during a call last week. Aside from ensuring the best medical care possible, the challenge for governments everywhere is to give out good advice, information, and swiftly allocate resources to containment strategies. It makes sense to discuss with each other how best to approach this, and South Korea is well placed to offer its experience.
안녕하세요. 저 오늘 담당 의사인데요. 증상이 어떻게 불편하세요? 지금 네, 조금만 참으시죠. 언니 그 가래를 최대
예, 한윤정님 진료 보실 거잖아요. 네, 네. 보실게요. 아, 진료 볼 때 여기서 봐요? 네.
저 오늘 담당 의사인데요. 증상이 어떻게 불편하세요? 지금 하는데 의사까지 저희가 조금만 참으시죠. 끝났어. 언니 그 가래를 최대
예, 한윤정님 진료 보실 거잖아요. 네, 보실게요. 진료 볼 때 여기서 봐요. 네.
Now, South Korea's coronavirus test kits have received interim approval from the U.S., which has expressed interest in buying them. The U.S. is one of over 80 countries around the world that have asked for Seoul to export or provide coronavirus quarantine products. Our Oh Jung-hee files this report from Seoul's foreign ministry.
3 South Korean companies have been approved to export coronavirus test kits to the U.S. Seoul's foreign ministry says that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has given the test interim approval. Seoul has confirmed with the White House that the procurement process will soon begin. The U.S. has only given the test an interim approval, as giving them an official approval is a lengthy process, and there's an urgent need for more tests in the U.S. Speaking with South Korean President Moon Jae-in on the phone last week, U.S. President Donald Trump asked for Seoul's assistance regarding coronavirus medical devices. President Moon promised his utmost support considering local supply. 12 South Korean test kit makers have applied for U.S. FDA approval, and more are expected to gain that approval. Over 80 countries have asked South Korea for exports or humanitarian aid of coronavirus quarantine products. Seoul, willing to share its COVID-19 experience and know-how, will be sending quarantine products to countries in need, considering the local situation and country's ties with South Korea. It has already exported coronavirus test kits to the United Arab Emirates, Romania, and Colombia. And dozens of countries are contacting South Korean firms directly to buy products. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea has placed around 10,000 people under quarantine over coronavirus concerns and released about 40% of them as they show no symptoms. North Korea has not reported an outbreak of COVID-19 yet, but it has intensified antivirus efforts by tightening its borders and toughening quarantine criteria and procedures. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un also has warned that if coronavirus hits the country, there will be serious consequences. But why is Kim Jong-un not wearing a mask amidst the spread of the new coronavirus? Previously, on February 28th, the North's official news agency said Kim Jong-un presided over a Politburo meeting of the ruling Workers' Party and discussed coronavirus prevention measures. In case the infectious disease spreading beyond control finds its way into our country, it will entail serious consequences, Kim was quoted as saying by the North's Korean Central News Agency. However, in the pictures released the same day, there were no participants wearing face masks during the meeting. None of the North's high-ranking officials, including Kim Jong-un, were wearing masks. Face masks are known to be effective at capturing droplets, which is a main transmission route of coronavirus. But this was not the last time he was seen without a mask. Kim Jong-un shone wearing a coronavirus face mask as he oversaw a missile strike drill despite fears of the spread of the COVID-19 in the country. Pyongyang's official newspaper Nodongshinmun published photos of rockets soaring out of multiple rocket launchers in an island target buried in smoke on March 2nd. Kim watched with a wide smile from an observation post. He wore a black fur hat and leather coat but was not wearing a face mask. And again, he was guiding another firepower strike drill of long-range artillery subunits on March 9th. He didn't wear a mask. However, this time, other military officials had black masks in an apparent reflection of the country's campaign against the coronavirus. We can speculate that Kim is not wearing a mask since other high-ranking officials are wearing it. Others say since presidents from many countries, including China, South Korea, and the United States, are not wearing a mask during official activities, it seems like Kim is showing similar patterns with other presidents. What do you think? If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. This was Sumi Yu from Korea Now. North Korea has placed around 10,000 people under quarantine over coronavirus concerns and released about 40% of them as they show no symptoms. North Korea has not reported an outbreak of COVID-19 yet, but it has intensified antivirus efforts by tightening its borders and toughening quarantine criteria and procedures. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un also has warned that if coronavirus hits the country, there will be serious consequences. But why is Kim Jong-un not wearing a mask amidst the spread of the new coronavirus? Previously, on February 28th, the North's official news agency said Kim Jong-un presided over a Politburo meeting of the ruling Workers' Party and discussed coronavirus prevention measures. In case the infectious disease spreading beyond control finds its way into our country, it will entail serious consequences, Kim was quoted as saying by the North's Korean Central News Agency. However, in the pictures released the same day, there were no participants wearing face masks during the meeting. None of the North's high-ranking officials, including Kim Jong-un, were wearing masks. Face masks are known to be effective at capturing droplets, which is a main transmission route of coronavirus. But this was not the last time he was seen without a mask. Kim Jong-un shone wearing a coronavirus face mask as he oversaw a missile strike drill despite fears of the spread of the COVID-19 in the country. Pyongyang's official newspaper Nodongshinmun published photos of rockets soaring out of multiple rocket launchers in an island target buried in smoke on March 2nd. Kim watched with a wide smile from an observation post. He wore a black fur hat and leather coat but was not wearing a face mask. And again, he was guiding another firepower strike drill of long-range artillery subunits on March 9th. He didn't wear a mask. However, this time, other military officials had black masks in an apparent reflection of the country's campaign against the coronavirus. We can speculate that Kim is not wearing a mask since other high-ranking officials are wearing it. Others say since presidents from many countries, including China, South Korea, and the United States, are not wearing a mask during official activities, it seems like Kim is showing similar patterns with other presidents. What do you think? If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. This was Sumi Yu from Korea Now.
In the car park of a baseball stadium on the outskirts of Seoul, they queue for a coronavirus test. This is one of dozens of drive-thrus across South Korea, where from the safety of your car, you can be tested for COVID-19. It takes just a matter of minutes, and results are available within 24 hours. Almost 500,000 people in the country have now gone through this process. After inventing the drive-thru, a walk-through version was later created, and together they form part of the most accessible and extensive testing strategy in the world. Up to 20,000 people a day can find out whether they have got the virus or not.
환자분이 이제 검사를 받으러 온 숫자는 보통 오전에 30-40명, 오후에도 30-40명. 그래서 하루에 총 70명에서 80명 가량 내원을 하고 있습니다.
South Korea's trace, test and treat approach was rolled out within days of its first confirmed cases. Just over 2 weeks later, it levelled off an outbreak centred on thousands of infections from a church congregation. the government had fast-tracked test kits into mass production.
계속적으로 이제 어쨌든 선별진료소는 방역의 최일선에 있기 때문에 계속적으로 저희가 이거에 대해서 방역에 최선을 다하고 있지만 최근에 또 입국자에 대한 강화나 이런 부분들이 되면서 보건소에서도 인력을 충원해서 지금 대처하고 있는 중입니다.
While other countries, including the UK, question the accuracy, feasibility and value of testing on this kind of scale, South Korea is sticking to a system which so far is proving a success. Debbie Edward, News at 10.
Well, governments globally are enacting strict measures to contain the coronavirus, raising questions about individual freedoms and privacy rights during a pandemic. Israel has given its security agencies the power to track the mobile data of people suspected of having the virus. The government will use the information to force them into quarantine and warn those who've come into contact with them. South Korea has taken similar steps by using mobile phone and satellite technology to track potential carriers. Ali Funk is a researcher for the watchdog Freedom House. She says strict measures must be put in place to ensure people's privacy isn't at risk once the pandemic is over.
We know from a public health perspective, it can be beneficial to track infected or potentially infected people. But what we're really concerned about is that this location tracking, the health-related information is going to be used for other purposes, particularly by governments who are using surveillance to track down activists or human rights defenders or journalists or even opposition figures. So if this information has to be collected, which I think in order to justify the collection, we have to ensure that it is scientifically supported as a way to protect public health. We need to ensure that the restrictions are as narrow as possible. So then when we get out of this, our privacy protections are still there, because what's happening is these current restrictions could have a lasting effect way long after we get the outbreak under control. It's going to be a big challenge, and it's something that we see post, terrorist attacks or other type of crises. And that's why it's very important for tech companies who are making these tools, for civil society groups, ordinary citizens, to really understand what type of limitations are happening now, so that once we get past this really scary time, we can fight again to have our privacy rights back to us, and free expression and freedom of association and assembly.